I'm Jason Kander.
And I'm Ravi Gupta.
And this is Majority 54, the podcast for meaningful conversations that change minds, change votes, and win elections. Ravi, where are you? Are you in the United States right now?
I am in London right now. I figured, given they just got an Indian prime minister, I figure it's a good time to move. You know, we save democracy in the United States, and I think that's it. I'm out. My job is done.
Yeah, I've done what I needed to do. Yeah, the only reason I know is, I mean, I would have no way to know because you did not communicate with me over the weekend because I watched that tragic Bills loss and I texted you and I was like trying to make you feel better. I don't know. I wasn't doing that, but I wasn't being mean. It never
works. Let me tell you something.
I was just checking on you.
It never works because the only thing it does is it reminds me that the game happened, which I'm an expert at compartmentalization when it comes to sports. Like, you become a Bills fan, you immediately just learn how to tuck it away. And being here helps because there's not a lot of Bills fans. I did watch it at a Bills bar, which was weird because all the people there were British and I couldn't understand why they would choose why they would opt into this tragedy that is the Buffalo Bills. But they were asking me like questions because I've been to 3 games this year, which is absurd already. It's like not even halfway through the season. And yeah, I was, just curiosity, but yeah, don't ever do that again. Just even if Josh Allen were to just disappear into thin air in the middle of the game, I don't care how weird and crazy it is. You always text me
during Chiefs games. And
I know, because you have won already, so it doesn't matter what the Chiefs do. It's that. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it. It's just a regular season game.
I was just looking to see if we have a better help ad this week. We don't, but it feels like this would be perfect. Your avoidance that you're dealing with here that doesn't seem healthy.
I do just fine.
Well, I finally heard back from you, and you sent me a picture of, was it an oxygen chamber in London?
As you know, I'm big on self-experimentation, and I have been doing oxygen therapy lately as a way to lengthen my telomeres. Which I know is my telomeres, the ends of your chromosomes, they shorten as you age. Oh. And so I've been doing oxygen therapy. There's an Israeli study out there that shows that this is one of the ways you can lengthen your telomeres. This is all very accessible to our audience, I imagine.
This is awesome. This is like an Aren't We Relatable?
Yeah, this is like bringing back to Aren't We Relatable. It's not even the only thing. I think I wrote you guys in our fitness group this week just with a few of the things I've been doing lately. I've been really crazy with my self-experimentation this year. So what's going on in your world before we move on?
Yeah, Diana, this is her last week of radiation for breast cancer. So that's very exciting. And
all going well?
Going well. Kind of rough. Kind of rough, but she's handling it well. And so we're excited about that. And, other stuff, work stuff. So, all right, let's move on.
Well, shout out to Diana.
And the Chiefs won. That was the other thing. I forgot.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Diana, who's continuing to work out, at least from what I can see in our workout crew.
Pretty impressive. So, okay, all right. Let's talk some trash. Now, we have a natural item. We promise everybody we are going to get to Kari Lake in a moment. But there's this one weird thing that Edie kind of teed up for us and Ravi didn't know anything about. And I was like, yeah, I've been noticing this. It is weird. There's this, I guess he's a pundit, troll, I don't know what he is, on Twitter. His name is Nick Adams. And this guy has in his Twitter name, it says in parentheses, alpha male. And that seems to be his whole deal. It came to Edie's attention because he keeps tweeting about Hooters. It's like over 30 tweets that she found about Hooters.
Can I just say something about the Twitter alpha male thing? It's like calling yourself humble.
Well, I wanted to talk about it because, with Josh Hawley has a book coming out called Manhood. And this is clearly, we've talked about this before. This is clearly an angle that these people are taking that, alpha males, and it kind of fits in with the way that they've positioned their party over the many decades. Alpha males are Republicans and beta males are Democrats. And so this first tweet that comes up when you search it, beta males go to hipster coffee shops for a dirty chai soy latte, while alpha males go to Hooters to drink beer and watch hockey. Very specific with the hockey.
I feel like also you could do both in the same day. Not that I'm recommending it. Like the time of day you're going to a coffee shop and the time of day you're going to Hooters are 2 different parts of the day. Like these aren't competing activities.
This is one that hopped out at me. I remember seeing this and thinking, well, this is interesting. Alpha males eat wings and drink beer at Hooters with the boys. Beta males nibble on tapas at Spanish vegan cafes with their wives. the reason this one jumps out at me is I remember I actually had drafted a reply to this and then thought, what am I doing?
But I have actually been to a Spanish tapas cafe with you and your wife, if you remember.
That's right.
When I was in Kansas City last time.
That's true. I forgot. Yeah. And we didn't go to Hooters. So I guess we're a couple vegan. Of beta males. And, I was thinking about this, like, I've been to Hooters. Like, I was in the United States Army. Like, it for whatever reason, it's a thing that people do. Co-ed groups of soldiers will go to Hooters. And I will say that I'm not trying to bag on Hooters, but I never went to Hooters and didn't get sick. So, like, it's not like the food is tremendous. And what I found out so interesting, and I almost replied to this, is like, this dude is saying alpha males don't hang out with their wives. And beta males do. And I almost replied to it and was like, I guess I'm a beta male because my wife is cool and funny and like a total smoke show. So like, yeah, I go wherever she wants to go. Not sure what's going on like in your marriage, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
Alpha males hide from their wives, I think is what he's saying. Yeah.
Like alpha males apparently have wives they don't like and aren't attracted to. Like that doesn't seem desirable.
I can't wait for this Josh Hawley book to come out. Do you have any idea when this comes out? Because I feel like we have to do a special episode just on this book.
I looked it up. It comes out in May, and as much as I hate the idea of paying for it, and you know me, I don't actually read political books like by anybody. I think I might actually read this, and I might do something I never do. I think I might hate read this, like hate consume it. I genuinely feel I've got to read it because I feel like I've got to get inside this argument and understand it from the inside out, because I think it's going to take a much bigger place in the Republican talking points.
Yeah, I always think they take a kernel of truth, right? Which is there are all sorts of pathologies happening with males of different ages. One example is just middle-aged men being more isolated than ever been before, not making friends. And they take this kernel of truth and then they want to blame somebody for it. And they want to blame liberals for it. And I do think it's important for us to fight back against that kind of stuff.
Well, and it's a message that can resonate because it's easier to be their version of a quote unquote alpha male. And then it confirms your life choices. So like, if you look at this Nick Adams fella, his whole thing is like ogle women. So there's sexism. And then there's the other part that's just like eat food that's not good for you, right? Like he's making fun of being, anything that is a dietary restriction of any kind. And it's like, well, yeah, that's easier to do. All of that requires less discipline. Yeah. So, of course, it's very appealing to people. But what always gets me about it is like, okay, well, let's really break this down. Like alpha male and beta male. I assume like in the state of nature, what we're talking about is the alpha male is physically stronger and will impose their will on the beta, right? Like that's I assume the root of all this. Well, like, the dude who just sits around and like stares at people and eats food that's bad for him versus the dude who like takes care of himself and like doesn't just sit. That dude is the alpha. Like that dude is going to win the fight. Like, so I find it fascinating that it's all really just confirmation bias. It's like, hey, look, you don't want to be empathetic. You don't want to be respectful, and you want to eat things that make you feel good, but make your life shorter. Guess what? That's the way to be. Like if you're with us, we're saying you're the cool kid. And anyway, that's clearly where they're going. I'm sure we'll see something about that in Holly's book. All right, now on to more serious trash talk, or more relevant trash talk, I should say. Did Kari Lake win the governor's race in Arizona?
In fact, she did not. She lost. Oh. It's official now. And this is part of a larger trend of election deniers not faring well in 2024. So Jim Marchant was defeated by Cisco Aguilar in Nevada's Secretary of State race. So this means that all but one of the so-called America First slate of candidates, the sort of election conspiracists, lost. And then you put the Kari Lake stuff and Mastriano lost and all this stuff together. It was a just horrific year to be an election denier. And I think this kind of gets to a conversation that you and I have been having for a long time on this podcast, which is, will the January 6th stuff matter? You and I went back and forth on this stuff. I think by and large, we're a little bit pessimistic that it would be a winning issue. And there's some polling out there, AP Votecast and others, that showed that this wasn't the number one issue that people were naming, it certainly was in the back of their minds as they went to the polls.
I think it had a lot to do with why Generation Z voters turned out the way they did. They probably, I mean, they definitely already leaned in our direction. So is it necessarily an issue that turned them from, independent to Democratic? No, but I think it persuaded them to go vote in a lot of cases. And in that way, I think it definitely made an impact. Millennials as well. I mean, people across the generations, but obviously the Generation Z had the biggest punch when it comes to pound for pound, how progressive as a generation it is. So them turning out a lot was obviously great for us. Side note, with the exception of Georgia, where Raffensperger, the Republican Secretary of State, has not been an election denier, every other, as far as I can tell, swing state Secretary of State race that was up went our way. Our friend Adrian Fontes won, in fact, outpaced the governor's race quite a bit, and was called pretty early by Arizona standards. So he won the Secretary of State's race, which is so cool. I mean, like we had Adrian on like a year and a half ago when it was literally the day that he conceded his reelection as Maricopa County Recorder.
That is right. Yeah, we did have him on that day when he found out he lost the last race.
And now he's the Secretary of State of Arizona. So not a good day to be in an election and deny the existence of fair elections. Who knew? And what I thought was funny, bringing us to the talking trash part of this, is Kari Lake, like one of the most prominent election deniers, her response to Katie Hobbs being declared the winner is Arizonans know BS when they see it, to which a chorus of people,
literally everybody on Twitter,
replied with, "That's why you lost," which was kind of perfect. That, and I guess in the closing days, she decided to just go negative on John McCain. Doesn't seem like a great way to hold together the Republican vote in Arizona. So,
well, I think she is the most glaring example of overplaying your hand. I think she and a lot of these MAGA Republicans, she said she was ultra MAGA. As you know, you've run for office. You tend to run to the left or the right, depending on what party you're in, and then you tack to the center in the general election. It's as tried and true as anything in politics. And some of these candidates ran to the right in the primary and then even more right in the general and thought they could get away with it. And by and large, they didn't. I know this is talking trash, but I earnestly am just so, and maybe this is why I'm not as bothered by 2 tragic Bills losses in a row, is that this was so shockingly heartening about the American public. I was nearly despondent for the past 6 months about what these candidates winning would mean for the future of our country. And the fact that voters defied, 50 years of history in midterm elections with the polling and the approval rating that Biden had and delivered the kind of margins they did in this race is absolutely stunning.
It was a massive relief, but as I've had more of a chance to reflect on it, I realized it wasn't just that we avoided a red wave. Like, Ravi, I think we won the midterms. Like, if you
won
look
3
at
elections
numbers,
in a row, if you think about it, 2018, 2020, 2022. We have, they're not all perfect, but we came out in better shape than our opponents did. 3 elections in a row. Now, looking ahead to the next race, and maybe this is a good segue, the Senate map is terrible in 2024. We've got to play defense in West Virginia, Ohio, Arizona, which is the cinema seat to, might not be here by the time we get to the general election, but Sherrod Brown, Manchin. We got to do Tester in Montana. We have almost no easy pickup opportunities. Like, the best pickups we've got are places like Florida and Texas. So it's going to be a tough season for us. This could be the last 2 years we have the Senate for a little while. I'm okay with it, knowing that the odds are bad. I think the statement about election denialism is really important. And even if we have a tough map the next time, we'll fight that battle when we get to it.
It's another reason why Georgia is so important.
Yeah, we got to net that seat. Give us a little bit of a cushion.
When visionary leaders capture the imagination of a nation.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
When disciplined communicators speak truth to power.
Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be freed, and the life of the world may move forward.
Humanity has been shaped by moments in which one person approached a crowd with something important to say. I'm John Meacham, and this is It Was Said, Season 2, a creation and production of C13 Originals, a Cadence 13 studio, in association with the History Channel. It Was Said, Season 2. Listen and subscribe for free on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know, lately I have been doubling back down. I'm already a very healthy eater, and I track all my food. And as you know, Ravi, this fitness competition that we do, I'm always tracking my food. But lately, I felt like it was getting into a rut. But I've been thinking lately, like, no, I need to dial back into whole foods, like actually just eating fish, taking the time to make eggs, that kind of stuff. And, one of the things that's really helpful in reminding me to do that is my test results from Everlywell. Everlywell is digital healthcare designed for you with personalized results and accessible tools for long-term health. With over 30 at-home lab tests and high-quality vitamins and supplements, you'll be able to find the perfect test for you or your loved one. So like for me, this helped me, confirm, okay, I'm good with dairy. So, it's very helpful to have this sort of knowledge and then to act accordingly.
The gift of health has never been so easy to share than it is this holiday. For listeners of the show, Everlywell is offering a discount of 20% off at-home lab tests at everlywell.com/majority54. That's everlywell.com/majority54 for 20% off your next at-home lab tests. That's everlywell.com/majority54. Yesterday, Donald Trump announced for president. This is his third presidential campaign, and he did it in a sort of Fidel Castro-esque hour-long speech at Mar-a-Lago that was so long, in fact, that even Fox News cut away from it after 30 minutes.
It was boring.
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think his heart's in it, Jason.
No, well, he's got to continually top himself. I mean, right. Which is why he called for the execution of drug dealers, like some Duarte Philippines stuff. That's hard when you got to continually top yourself. Like you just start cutting into the bone, man. And I mean, it was weird. Like instead of doing like a big rally for an announcement, which is what you would expect him to do, instead of doing that, he did what really just looked like a speech you would give as either a concession or a victory speech. It looked like the room of swells that gather on election night who can pay to get in there. And that's what he did. And then, they were like all dressed up for a night out, and he's giving this like, I don't know, they weren't the rowdy MAGA crowd that they're like, I don't know, diamond plated MAGA. And that's not, it just didn't have the energy that I think he was going for.
Murdoch World seems to be turning against him. The New York Post, just on the bottom of the front page, put, quote, Florida man makes announcement, page 26. That's how they covered it. Our friend Mike Murphy said on his pod, he said, call me Inspector Clouseau, but I sense a memo from Rupert, is what he said about the way that Fox News and New York Post, but I don't know who, such an old man reference, Mike Murphy, but I don't know who Inspector Clouseau is.
I vaguely get it.
Yeah. But he's got a point, which is obviously there's something coordinated happening here. Interestingly, even Ivanka said she's not getting involved this time. She says, I love my father very much, but this time around, I'm choosing to prioritize my young children and private life we are creating as a family. I would add, it was a little longer statement, I would add my grifting with Saudi Arabia and my husband, which probably takes a decent amount of time.
Yeah. It's basically, I'd like to be able to go to the fancy parties again, please. May I please come back to the fancy? I liked being a fancy New York person. Can I come back? Right. And not like among liberals, just like among the, the polite Republicans, the people who, or the quiet Republican. I'd like to do that again. Remember, that was fun when people didn't hate me. Like, right. You shouldn't have done what you did.
We're not turning back there.
I think that he's still the odds-on favorite to get the nomination because, as Al said on this show last week, if they run literally more than one person against him, then he's going to have the voting bloc that he needs to move through the primaries. But then the other piece to this is if he doesn't get the nomination, he's going to tear them all down with him.
Yes,
he's going
my
to
favorite
be
scenario.
Yeah, he's going to be on the sidelines, just heckling them, making it where people don't want to go out and vote. Basically what he did in the Georgia runoff this last time around, not this time, but the time before, where he spent the whole time talking about how bogus all the elections were and you couldn't trust the voting. And so nobody went out and voted. There's no way in the world that Trump loses the nomination and says, well, that was all on the up and up. It's just not going to happen.
This is definitely going to be enjoyable. I just want to name it for our audience. Like the Trump DeSantis showdown, and who else, who Lord knows who else, is going to be enjoyable. I'm just going to name it now. Just give yourself permission to enjoy it. I would rather get done with Trump as a person now and deal with a different person in DeSantis. But there's like a healthy debate around that, whether DeSantis is more effective, Trump, whatever. I get that debate. DeSantis is polling really well. For the first time, he's polling ahead of Trump, both nationally and even more so in early states. This is the newest poll that came out right after this election. Now, obviously, it's super preliminary, but I would say this is by far the greatest threat that Trump has faced within the party since the very early days of that 2016 primary. And there's a whole lot of time and a whole lot that can happen here. But DeSantis is a real threat to him. You do get a sense that the right-wing ecosystem has moved against Trump in a very coordinated way. Everybody from the Ben Shapiro types all the way up to the Fox Newses, even people in Trump's own orbit seem to be skittish about this. Kayleigh McEnany said he should delay his announcement. His big sin isn't that he was racist. He hated immigrants. He incited an insurrection, that he pressured the Ukrainian government to investigate Biden. None of this took nuclear documents. None of this is a sin to these right-wing figures like Shapiro. The biggest sin was he cost them the midterm elections. That's the big sin he committed that caused this sort of uprising against him.
They were like, look, we were riding this horse because it was a winner. Like, we ain't going to stay on this horse when it's not a winner. Like, it keeps biting everybody. It's, and that's what's happening. I'm just going to be interested to see if they can actually push him to the side.
Also worth mentioning that Biden was asked about whether he'd run. He seemed to signal he is leaning in that direction, but that he'd be talking to his family. Any sense about, do you think he's going to run? And when will we know for sure? Because if he's not going to run, which I think is the less likely scenario, he should make that decision pretty soon, because it would be a disaster if he made that decision really late.
I'm sure he's going to run, and I have no idea. I would imagine in the next few months, I would imagine in the next few weeks, there'll be I am going to run. Mm-hmm. I don't have an announcement. It's sort of I don't have an announcement to make, but yes, I'm going to run, or whatever, however you legally say that to not bring all that to bear. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. If he doesn't, it'll be a 2020 style melee all over again, I'm sure.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating. Maybe I think there's some people who are saying that it's incumbent upon him to make up his mind by the State of the Union, which, that is soon. So I don't know. You'll be by far the oldest president ever, I think, at that point. So I think age is obviously going to play a part in at least public perceptions and his decision to do that. Like, how he interprets this election is fascinating. Is this about Biden's strength or Trump's weakness, or a combination of the two? Is probably a big debate that's happening amongst his advisors right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure I know what his opinion is.
Yeah. I'm not sold on this being Biden's strength. I would obviously vote for him again, but his approval rating is what it is, and I actually think he's accomplished a lot. I think he's underestimated in many ways, but I don't think he should confuse himself that he doesn't have real fundamental issues to work through in the next 2 years here with the public.
Yeah. But put yourself in Biden's shoes, right? Like, we have won 3 elections in a row, and in the last 2, he's been intimately involved, obviously, and he's been the standard bearer in both. And if you believe, which I'm sure he does, as you and I do, that like democracy is on the line now in each of these elections, I've been a person who came to the conclusion that I was the best person to win. Now, I ended up not doing it, and people can buy the book and read all about that. But but I've been in that headspace where you're like, I think I'm the best chance we have. If he comes to that conclusion, he's running.
Jason, I've been away now for a few days, and I'm loving it out here in London, but I am missing that Helix mattress.
Do you think that the mattress misses you? Because when you're a little kid, like, your parents were like, oh, your bear misses you. And so I still sometimes do that in my mind. It still works with Bella. I'm like, hey, it's time to take a nap. And then she's like, I don't know. And then I'm like, but your bear wants to take a nap with you. And she's like, oh yeah, good point. So anyway, I don't know if you ever do that with your mattress, but I think if there ever were a mattress brand that would miss you back, I think it's Helix.
I would like to think my mattress, my Midnight Lux mattress, misses me so much. Listeners, you could take the sleep quiz. You can get it done in under 2 minutes and get matched to the right mattress for you. And they offer a 100-night risk-free trial. You could try out your mattress and see how your body adjusts to it. And if it's not right for you, you could send it back and get a full refund.
Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/majority54. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
All right, Jason, big question for you. When are we going to get True and Bella on Athletic Greens?
I don't know. I got to be honest, though. I love AG1. You love AG1. Diana loves AG1. But, he's a kid and it's green. So he's not exactly like, Dad, when do I get to start drinking? I mean, like, he eats like 4 things. So, I mean, it's not, so he's not clamoring for it. But I guess I am curious when that sort of thing could start.
Yeah. I think it tastes really good. And maybe we put some food coloring in there for him. If you're new to this podcast, AG1, you got to try it. It's a small micro habit with big benefits. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, mental clarity, alertness. It's the one thing you could do every single day to take care of yourself. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D, really important this time of year, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/majority. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/majority to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Let's talk about another stunning victory here, Jason. We won back control of the Senate. So since our last podcast, both Nevada and Arizona have been called for Democrats. And it looks like we are going to fall short in the House, but extremely narrow loss in the House, where probably single-digit Republican majority. I think this is a really good outcome for us. I know we just talked about like how bad the Senate map is in 2024, but this means that judges will get confirmed. It's possible we can get to 51, so we don't have to do all this crazy power sharing stuff with McConnell. It also means that we can block Republican crazy without Biden even having to use his veto. And it also means that if there's crazy impeachment shenanigans, that Schumer will have control about how that goes down.
Yeah, there's probably going to be some crazy impeachment shenanigans. Actually, I probably not with this narrow of a thing. Who knows? McCarthy is such an empty suit. Like, who knows what, he caves to. One thing I wanted to shout out as we talk about this is winning back control of the Senate. A lot of people were like, what happened in Nevada? Like, now there's a lot of things that happened in Nevada, but I actually said this to Catherine Cortez Masto the other day. Like, I don't think people have thought enough or considered enough about the difference between the different candidates that everybody had to face. Like, Catherine Cortez Masto did not face some crazy coming out of nowhere, election denying, she faced the former attorney general of the state, who's also a legacy politician in the state, who's gotten votes before, is a very standard Republican, not standard like moderate, but standard like a name brand Republican they're used to in Nevada that they voted for before. So she, in my opinion, had the toughest challenge in terms of the toughest candidate to run against. So it's actually, on the one hand, you can be like, oh man, that was really close in Nevada. On the other hand, you can look at it and go, okay, we won the Secretary of State's race and we beat a really tough opponent in the Senate race. And we did this in a midterm. Now the governor lost. But, overall, I think it's actually a really good result there and everywhere else. So yeah, I can't believe we kept the Senate.
Yeah, it's really wild. I mean, I think the shocker is that we're damn close to keeping the House, where I think our odds are 16%. And I tweeted out before the election that our odds were exactly the same that Trump's were in beating Hillary Clinton on election day in 2016. And I tweeted that out to try to pump people up, but I didn't even believe 16%.
What's funny about that is that if you look at the House map and the way the votes went, is that if you match them up with the Electoral College, we actually won the Electoral College for the House and narrowly lost the popular vote. So same result that Trump got.
Yeah, and I think the popular vote will probably narrow a little bit once all the California vote is in, but I think we still fell short. And there's a lot of people saying, hey, if it were redistricting, we'd pick up more seats. Yeah, definitely. But you look in some of these states, New York is a good example. There's a huge debate going on about New York's redistricting and the future of the party and all that. There are some Democrats who lost in Biden plus 10 and more districts. That wasn't a redistricting loss. That has a messaging loss. And I think one thing we learned is that a lot of these races are very local this year. So like the way people perceive the status quo in New York is very different than the way they're perceiving it in Arizona and Nevada and, different in Florida, as we all know. And I think that there are going to be state by state debates going on, hyper local debates about the Democratic brand. And I would say in New York, the Democratic brand is not very strong. And if we want to take the House back in 2024, which I think a very possible scenario is we win the House and lose the Senate in 2024. In the end, like, we can at least guarantee that we don't have a Republican trifecta for the near future. And obviously, I think with the speed at which we can get these judges confirmed is going to be really important. Because if you think about what Trump did in his last 2 years, he stacked the judiciary, and it's time for Democrats to get ruthless on this kind of stuff. Well, we got mostly great candidates in these really insanely hard districts in 2024. So John Tester, there's nobody better. You got Joe Manchin, who, whatever you think about him, is by far the best candidate we can field in West Virginia, and Sherrod Brown is by far the best candidate we could field in Ohio. These are three excellent candidates for their states. Now, Kyrsten Sinema,
not an excellent candidate.
Well, there is an argument to be made that she's really popular with independents in Arizona, and I'll follow the data. I don't love her, but I'll follow the data. Not that my opinion matters at all in Arizona. I don't vote there, but I could be persuaded that she's a strong candidate. It would take a whole lot of persuading, given how she's conducted herself. But she may not even run again. Biden needs to start. There was a funny tweet out there that Biden should start offering ambassadorships to all these New York Republican congressional members, just like start sending them to prime locations. And maybe, even like the tweet also said judgeships, but I wouldn't go that far. Let's give them stuff that's not as
that's a real thing. People joke, but like that happens in state government all the time.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we had a Democratic governor and I was in the state house, like, and he was trying to, get his numbers where he needed them to be. Like there were Republicans getting appointed to cabinet positions left and right, man. And boy, it was making members of the caucus mad. So that happens, no doubt about it. The last item on this we should talk about is just like how to message this stuff. And I actually do think we have to message the momentum, because momentum matters, particularly with independent voters. Like folks are just more inclined to gravitate toward the party that seems like it's winning. And, we just said a few minutes ago, like we won these midterms. That's how we got to start talking about it. Like everywhere we won the midterms. Like you said, we won 3 election cycles in a row. If people hear that often enough, they're going to be like, well, there's a reason they keep winning. They must be better. People must think they're better. And it is a very persuasive thing.
Yeah, we have so many good fundamentals. The infighting amongst the Republicans, the fact that inflation may finally be getting under control, and the fact that the conversation today, this is really good for Warnock, the conversation today is not about the woke Democrats or how out of touch we are and all that. It's about the MAGA Republicans and how they overplayed their hands and fielded terrible candidates. And their biggest weakness is the fact that they put up with this stuff for so long. Trump didn't make all these Republicans do all the crazy things they did. They went along with it. And Roe is a perfect example. Like Trump, yeah, he played a role in that, but that was a 50-year project of the Republican Party. They got what they wanted. They're the dog who caught the car, to use the stale metaphor. And we just got to keep reminding voters of that. Like also, Trump didn't make Rick Scott come out with his ridiculous platform to cut entitlements, and Lindsey Graham to do the same, or to float that abortion ban that Lindsey Graham was talking about. Like they're their own worst enemies. And all this infighting, Rick Scott versus McConnell, McCarthy versus Matt Gaetz, Trump versus DeSantis, probably, Bannon, InfoWars versus Ben Shapiro. Just break off the popcorn, enjoy the next year. Obviously, we're going to be in for a fight for 2024, but they will definitely be a wounded dog heading into that general election. And I think I'm just proud of our ability to hold it together. Like it used to be Democrats in disarray, the AOC wing versus the Biden wing. I don't hear that much of that anymore at all. Like there was a little bit of that after the New York stuff, but by and large, I think people know what kind of candidates they want. and we're pretty good at picking them. There are a couple of candidates that I wish we could have back this cycle, but by and large, I love the slate we put up, and they perform quite well.
The other thing that happened that I think is pretty interesting, and I think Biden administration needs credit for this, or the Biden political operation, is that they made a conscious choice to center MAGA in the messaging and to move away from making it about owning Trump, making every, because you can move away from Trump by just being like, well, I disagree with him on this or that, or I don't deny the results of the election or whatever. So by making a conscious choice a few months ago to go out and talk about MAGA Republicans and extremism, they really did to them what had been done to us with quote unquote wokeism. And it's funny because you and I, we actively were looking for a word. We came up with faketriots that one of the listeners came up with. But really, I think it turns out that the alternative is MAGA. And it's really important because Trump may be fading from the scene, but the idea of MAGA Republicans is not, and it's going to remain a stain on them. That's huge to have made that pivot.
And it's amazing that Trump, when he announced yesterday, his slogan was what? Make America Great Again. He didn't even change the slogan. So it's kind of lazy. And he's looking to the past, not to the future. And that is not a winning recipe. One last thing on this is just tactics. So there were a couple articles out here that were, I think, just a little inside baseball stuff here. Two interesting facts. One is the Senate Democratic campaign arm spent more on field organizing than they did on television ads for the first time ever. And the second is Republican campaigns almost completely ceded digital campaigning to Democrats. This is after dramatically outspending Democrats in digital media over the last two cycles. These are two rather surprising pieces of information.
Yeah, the first one makes sense to me because, who's watching TV ads that much anymore? I see the political ads because they put them in a lot of live sporting events, right? And that tends to be, if the TV's on in my house, it's usually that. If it's actual TV as opposed to Disney Plus or whatever.
Right.
So I see them, but man, I couldn't quote one back to you. I just, maybe it's because
Tom Malinowski, Inside Training Congress. That's the one I keep saying.
Well, that worked. Didn't he lose?
Did he lose? I don't even know. I didn't.
I feel bad. I know Tom.
I knew him from the UN days a little bit because he was at Human Rights Watch. But there was that one. There's honestly, I follow this stuff for a living, and I'm getting so many ads during these Buffalo Bills games that I'm like, I don't even keep track. After a while, my head's spinning. I don't know who the Democrat is, who's the Republican. You
can't tell because also there's so many third-party ads.
Right.
Point is, I think people are largely tuning them out. If you can create a content that can go viral somehow, that's different. But if you're just putting up your 30 seconds, it's particularly in a midterm, it's a way better use of your resources to spend it on field, to go out, find your voters and get them to the polls, right? Go communicate with them and make it easy for them and get them to the polls. That makes way more sense, and it was clearly a much better use of resources. Now, the second thing about the digital campaigning, maybe it's because I've been out of the day-to-day long enough. I don't really understand this. Why would the Republicans not get into this the way they did last time?
I think it's partially a reflection of how fractured the Republicans are right now, which is Rick Scott has his own Senate PAC. McConnell has his. They're fighting. They're not communicating really well. You also have the Trump specter where traditionally what the RNC would be doing is helping out with this kind of stuff, and Trump's war chest would come into play, but he's raising all this money for himself. They're all split. There's the Rick Scott wing, McConnell and all that. And I think my sense is they weren't planning really well ahead in these races, but they were making investments here and there in a herky-jerky fashion, playing chicken with each other, and they weren't investing in this sort of long-term game of collecting data messaging to voters in the way that, for instance, Tara McGowan, I interviewed her last week from what used to be called Acronym, which is now called Good Information, is we now have all these Democratic groups that are, every year, whether it's an election year or not, are testing ads, building strong databases, putting that stuff out there. Tara also has all these newsrooms across the country that are local newsrooms that she works with that are putting out content, and she's targeting those ads to voters from what I understand. So these operations are getting more and more sophisticated, and because of the harmony within the Democratic Party, a sentence I thought I would never say, because of our harmony, And also because Biden's not a grifter in the way that Trump is, we have like a pretty stable long-term operation going on right now. And that's pretty awesome.
They were completely taking for granted the idea that they would take over. And so they were so busy jockeying for position of who would be in what spot. And that always gets you, man. Like I always make these Missouri references because it's what I grew up in politically. But, Democrats lost the state legislature here after having it for decades in 2002. And when we lost it, that election cycle, the Democratic leadership in the state legislature had spent that election cycle not running around, making sure they're getting the right candidates and protecting them. They'd been running around trying to secure votes for the leadership race that was coming up, right? That's what they were all doing. And it sounds like that's what the Republicans were doing, both in the Senate and the House, frankly. It's not surprising to me that McConnell will end up being, because I'm sure he will end up being the minority leader, because, that's a really small caucus and there's just so many people in there that owe him, right? But McCarthy hasn't been the leader that long, and he clearly is totally incompetent. I'm just like, I don't know how that guy gets from his front door to his office. Like, I mean, the dude is just tripping over himself constantly and can't decide who he's going to line up with and what he's going to say. And, 1 minute he's defending Liz Cheney. The next minute he's casting her out. 1 minute he's calling on Trump to resign. The next minute he's like, oh, yeah, I'm ride or die. I mean, the guy is just a tool. I am shocked that he's ultimately probably going to be the speaker.
Imagine being like, a couple of Matt Gaetzes and Marjorie Taylor Greenes away from losing your majority at any point, where you like basically each one of them has like a veto over everything you do. I mean, it's going to be insane.
I have a friend who's a member of Congress and has at least toyed with the idea of leadership stuff. And I recently said to him, the idea of having to get votes from other politicians is my worst nightmare. And I told him, and I have some pretty bad nightmares. So I just can't imagine wanting to do that. But also, like, particularly in the situation McCarthy's in, there was a great moment when they interviewed Nancy Pelosi and they asked her, do you think Kevin McCarthy is up to the job of speaker?
You are uniquely qualified to understand what it takes to be Speaker of the House. Does he have it?
But why would I make a judgment about something that may or may not ever happen? No, I don't think he has it, but that's up to his own people to make a decision.
She was like, look, that's not for me to decide, a bunch of diplomatic stuff. She goes, but no, he's not.
It's good comedic timing.
All right, we are still taking auditions / applications / whatever, pitches for being the person who we bring on the show in the next few days to be like our person to help everybody get ready for their Thanksgiving dinner. So you come on, we will advise you on how to approach your Thanksgiving dinner with your family if you're going to have some difficult political conversations. And then that will be, a learning point for everybody else as they listen to that conversation. So if you think or maybe you want to bring on your conservative family member with you or something, if you feel like you are a good candidate for this, you can either email us or call us. You can call us at 508-687-2589, 508-687-2589. You can email us m54@wondermedianetwork.com, m54@wondermedianetwork.com. As always, I'm at Jason Kander on Instagram and Twitter. Ravi is at Ravi M. Gupta on Twitter and Instagram. The show is at Majority54 on Twitter. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.
Majority 54 is a Wonder Media Network production. It's produced by Grace Lynch, Edie Allard, Adesua Agbanile, and Sarah Schleid. Theme music provided by Kemet Coleman. A special thanks to Diana Kander.